Professors love to think they're the smartest men in the room. And to be fair, most of the time they are. Unless the room also has a dishwasher in it. Not just any dishwasher. This one stood quiet in the corner, hands wet, sleeves rolled up, listening to them argue about numbers they couldn't crack, equations that made their heads ache. They laughed when he spoke. They scoffed when he said, "I can solve that." Because who takes math advice from a man holding a sponge? 5 minutes later, their laughter turned into silence. Because the man wiping plates had just solved the riddle they'd been chasing for 40 years. And his name, Jasonstatham. Turns out the only thing harder than that equation was swallowing their pride. If you've got a few minutes, I'll tell you how a lowly dishwasher outsmarted the very people who thought they ruled the world of intelligence, and why none of them ever laughed at him again. The university's dining hall wasn't where genius was supposed to happen. It smelled of grease, old coffee, and disinfectant. The kind of place where intellectuals pass through with their noses high, plates piled with food, too busy debating theories to notice the ones cleaning up after them. Jasonstatham was just another shadow in the background. He scrubbed pans, wiped trays, and worked the industrial dishwasher like it was a stubborn machine built only to mock him. His apron was stained, his knuckles raw from soap and hot water. Nobody looked at him twice. And that was the mistake. Because while the professors talked, Jason listened. While students crammed formulas into their heads like stuffing into a pillow, Jason studied patterns, numbers, logic. Every empty conversation that spilled from their mouths, he caught it, turned it over, and pieced it together like fragments of a puzzle no one else could see. That night, a group of 5 scientists claimed a table in the corner of the hall. Their voices carried, confident, clipped, smug. They weren't students anymore. These were published men, award winners, experts. And yet they were stuck. The chalkboard they had rolled in from a lecture hall was already covered with sprawling equations, Greek symbols smeared into clouds from frustrated hands. The riddle was famous, a mathematical beast unsolved for decades. Universities built reputations just for trying. Careers had died on this exact equation. Jason stacked trays in silence, watching the scientists argue. "You can't just cancel that out," one snapped, jabbing chalk at a set of numbers. "That violates the base assumption." "Base assumption is the problem," another shot back. "You're stuck in orthodoxy. The solution requires deviation." Jason almost laughed. Orthodoxy, deviation. They were just words dressed up to sound smarter than stuck and lost. The dishwasher hummed beside him, rattling its protest. He closed it with a shove of his hip and dried his hands. He told himself to stay quiet, stay invisible. That's what he was good at. But then one of the scientists chuckled, shaking his head at the equation. "Even the janitors here could see this is impossible," the man muttered. Jason's hands froze on the rag. A janitor, a dishwasher, a ghost in an apron. It was all the same to them. A man not worth listening to. He dropped the rag, walked over, stood by the chalkboard. The scientists blinked at him like someone had let a stray dog in from the alley. Jason pointed to the smeared equation. "You're chasing the wrong term," he said flatly. "You'll never get symmetry that way." For 2 seconds the room went quiet, then they laughed. Real laughter, not nervous, not polite mockery. One leaned back in his chair, smirking. "And what would you know about symmetry? You wash dishes." Jason met his eyes, unflinching. "And yet I can solve that equation." The laughter got louder. One of them clapped sarcastically, another shook his head in disbelief. A third muttered, "God, this place hires anyone." Jason didn't argue, he didn't defend himself. He just picked up the chalk. The sound of it against the board sliced the laughter in half. Screech. White lines cut through smudges. His hand moved with precision, no hesitation, no doubt. The scientists watched, their smirks faltering with every stroke. Jason didn't need to think. He'd already solved this in his head a dozen times while washing pans, building the proof between stacks of plates and clattering forks. Now he was just copying it down, like tracing from memory. The chalk tapped one last time. Jason stepped back. The board wasn't chaos anymore. It was clean, elegant, balanced like a blade. The silence was thicker than the smell of grease in the room. One of the scientists leaned forward, lips moving as he traced the proof with his eyes. His brow furrowed, his lips parted. He looked at the others. "He's right." The words hit harder than a punch. Another scientist shoved his chair back and stood, scanning the board like it had betrayed him. That's impossible." "Check it again," Jason said simply. They did twice, 3 times, and every time the math bowed to him. The dishwasher. The room shifted. The same men who'd mocked him seconds ago now stood stunned, silent, some pale, some furious, all humiliated. Jason wiped his hands on his apron. "You can keep the credit," he said. "I don't need it." And with that he turned, walked back to the sink and picked up another plate. But the scientists, they couldn't pick up their pride. That was just the beginning. Because word doesn't stay quiet when someone like Jasonstatham walks into a room and rewrites history with chalk dust. The story spread, first among students, then faculty, then far beyond the campus. The dishwasher who solved the unsolvable. The man in the apron who made geniuses look like amateurs. And Jason knew the real test wasn't the equation. It was what would come next. The problem with geniuses is that they hate being wrong more than they love being right. And the 5 scientists Jasonstatham humbled in that greasy university dining hall, they weren't just wrong, they were exposed. Within 24 hours, whispers about the dishwasher who solved it spread like spilled coffee across campus. By 48, it was an open secret. Students whispered it in lecture halls. Professors muttered it in staff rooms. By the end of the week, it hit the press. Dishwasher outsmarts scientists, solves decades-old equation. It was the kind of headline nobody believed, until they saw the chalkboard photo. And there was Jason. Apron still tied, chalk dust on his fingers, expression calm as if he just ordered breakfast instead of rewriting the rules of math. The media framed it as a fairy tale, but to Jason it was just Tuesday. The scientists, of course, scrambled for cover. One claimed he'd guided the dishwasher to the solution. Another suggested Jason had stumbled onto it by accident, like solving equations was the same as tripping over a curb. A third outright denied it happened, until someone played the video recorded on a student's phone. There was Jason's voice, calm, low, steady. "You're chasing the wrong term. You'll never get symmetry that way." And then the chalk moving, the room going silent, the stunned faces. Proof in pixels. By the time the clip hit 1 million views online, the scientists weren't laughing anymore. Jason, however, didn't bask in it. He didn't do interviews. He didn't pose for cameras. He just kept showing up for shifts, scrubbing pans, stacking trays, same as always. But that quietness, that only made the story bigger. Reporters camped outside the diner. Students lined up not for the food, but for the chance to glimpse him. They called him the dishwasher genius, the chalkboard phantom, even the 200 IQ ghost. Jason ignored it all. Until one night, when the same group of professors stormed into the diner with reinforcements, 2 more academics, notebooks in hand, eyes sharp with challenge. They didn't want dinner, they wanted redemption. "You got lucky last time," one sneered. "Let's see you handle this." He slammed a fresh set of equations on the counter, pages thick with lines of symbols, problems unsolved, conjectures dismissed, questions meant to break careers. The room stilled. Students leaned forward. Phones came up. Jason glanced at the stack like it was a grocery list. "You want me to solve your homework again?" he asked, voice dry as sandpaper. "This isn't homework," another spat. "This is Nobel-level theory." Jason smirked. So was the last one. He took a pen, flipped the first page, and started writing. What happened over the next hour wasn't a fight, it was a dismantling. Line by line, Jason shredded decades of failure. He spotted shortcuts they'd missed, errors they'd buried, and patterns they'd been too blind to see. His solutions weren't just correct, they were elegant, clean, like art done in numbers. The crowd grew. Waitresses abandoned trays. Customers forgot meals. Even the cook leaned against the doorframe, jaw slack. The clatter of dishes faded into silence, broken only by the scratch of Jason's pen. At the end of it, Jason slid the stack back across the counter. "There, fixed, you're welcome." The professors didn't even argue, they couldn't. Their faces were pale, lips tight, reputations shredded. Jason stood, untied his apron, and dropped it on the counter. "I quit," he said. "Plates are boring. Equations at least fight back." The room erupted. Students cheered. Reporters sprinted out to phone editors. And Jason walked out the door, unbothered, as if he hadn't just demolished half the academic establishment in one sitting. That was supposed to be the end. But here's the thing about humiliation: it grows teeth. The scientists didn't just want revenge. They needed it. Their grants, their prestige, their careers depended on proving Jason wasn't what he appeared to be. So they challenged him publicly, on national television, a live debate broadcast worldwide. Jason agreed, not because he wanted the fame, but because, as he put it, sometimes you've got to take out the trash on camera so it doesn't crawl back in. The stage was set. On one side, 6 of the world's most decorated mathematicians. Titles, medals, published books stacked like armor. On the other, Jasonstatham. No degree, no credentials, just a man in a plain shirt, sleeves rolled, calm as ever. The moderator introduced the first problem, a monster of a riddle projected on a giant screen. The professors hunched, scribbling, muttering. Jason sat still, hands folded, eyes scanning once. 2 minutes later, he raised his hand. "Done." The audience laughed nervously, the professors scoffed. But then the board confirmed it. Jason's answer was correct. Perfect. Round 2, same result. Round 3, even faster. By the 5th round, the laughter was gone. By the 7th, the professors were sweating. By the 9th, they weren't even trying, they were watching him work. Jason leaned back, pen dropping with a click. "You wanted a dishwasher to wash the floor with you. Congratulations. Consider yourselves clean." The crowd exploded. Hashtags lit up. The clip went viral before the broadcast even ended. Jason didn't just win, he buried them. And yet, the real shock wasn't the equations. It was what came after. Because when Jason walked off that stage, a man in a dark suit was waiting in the wings. No cameras, no applause, just a quiet nod. "You're wasted here," the man said. "Equations are just the surface. We need you somewhere bigger, something classified." Jason stared at him, not interested. "Think again," the man replied. "Because the problems we're dealing with, they make your chalkboard look like kindergarten." Jason smirked, shook his head, and walked away. But the world had already changed. The dishwasher who solved the unsolvable wasn't invisible anymore. And the scientists who mocked him, they didn't just lose a debate. They lost the illusion that intelligence had a dress code. If you've got a few minutes, remember this. Genius doesn't care about aprons, titles, or degrees. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's scrubbing plates. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, it's Jasonstatham, waiting for the moment to write your humiliation in chalk.